Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Right on Track. I am very excited because joining me today is a returning guest. She is basically a superstar of the show at this point. Please welcome Madison Young.
Thank you. I was actually thinking that this is my fourth time coming on. I was like, at this point, I should just be like a co-host.
Awesome. Well, I'm thrilled you're joining me today because we are going to be chatting about writing from a title. And before we get into this, though, what have you been up to these past few months?
Oh my gosh, that's such a big question. Lots of things. I'm currently looking to move to Nashville, so I've been checking out some different places, and I visited there for a couple of weeks. And I've been playing a lot of shows. Not writing as much as I would like to be, but I am trying to write a lot. And then the company I work for has just been so crazy busy. And which is really great because I love my job, but it keeps me on my toes. So it's been really good. Very, very good and chaotic and busy, but all good things.
That's awesome. Well, it's so cool you're thinking about moving to Nashville. I hope that goes well. Keep me updated because I'm going to be there in October. So if you're there, we should totally meet up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My goal is to be there by October, so that would be perfect.
Yay! Reunited in Nashville.
Yes.
Well, let's dive into our fun chat about writing from a title. So, first, for anyone listening, this is basically just a songwriting technique that is exactly what it sounds like. A song is written from the title, so the concept and story is basically all developed from the title. So, Madison, why do you think this is a great technique?
So writing from a title can be really great because it can serve as like a roadmap for your song. Um, Sometimes if you sit down to write and you have nothing, if you're looking at that blank piece of paper, it can be really daunting. Nothing comes to mind. It's just like you're floundering for ideas. But having a title, say something like "Thinking About You," um, you can there's a lot of things that you can do with that, and there's a lot of ideas that immediately sparks. And so it can kind of just get the ideas flowing faster. And then you find yourself knowing what your chorus is, your big idea of your chorus is already going to be. Personally, writing choruses is really hard for me. So having the hard part out of the way, having the major hook figured out already is really, it just kind of like lightens the load and like allows me to take a deep breath and just keep going. Um, so that's personally why I like writing from a title first.
I love what you said about choruses because I'm the same way. You know me, I'm super visual and I love my imagery, and I tend to really get deep into verse content first. And then I'm like, wait, I have all these pretty images and metaphors, but what am I actually trying to say? So I completely agree that starting from a title can help you be grounded in the message sooner. And for me personally, something else I really like about writing from titles is I write songs that I may not have considered writing because you can't really anticipate being somewhere or reading something and something jumping out as a title because those things are just completely unpredictable. And when you get one of those moments, it can make your mind go down all these paths that you haven't gone down before, which leads to song ideas that you may not have thought of. Because when I'm writing from concepts in my life and stories, they tend to be centered around similar things, but when a very unique phrase or word jumps out that's completely different, that opens the door for more creative songs.
Absolutely. I I found myself during like the pandemic and stuff when I was stuck inside a lot, just feeling very uninspired. I had no idea what to write about because my day looked exactly the same. And I have, since co-writing with a lot of people and taking a lot of songwriting classes and stuff, I found that even if you're doing the same things day after day, there is um, the songs are everywhere. There's creativity everywhere. And once you start noticing, oh, like this is where I find titles, or like, oh, this is how you can find creativity in the world around you, suddenly those ideas and concepts and titles just jump out at you, and you can just easily grab them whenever you feel like it. So it's definitely been a blessing to be able to notice, okay, like I'm in the car and I'm listening to the radio, and the radio host says something about whatever going on, and I'm like, oh, look, there's five titles and what he just said. Great, there's five new song ideas. So it's just it's really great to have that that source that I didn't even realize I had before.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And the coolest thing with this and inspiration in general is it's not like you're going about your day. I wonder what song title I'll find next. Like these are things that just jump out of nowhere. And so that's a perfect transition into chatting about where we can find song titles. So, where are some places that you found titles?
Well, we're gonna. I know what we're doing next, so well, I'll have an example. But poems and books. I love television. I love watching TV and movies. So TV and movies, like quotes from that stuff. And then a tool that I do is I like to journal or free write at the top of every writing session that I do, and maybe I journal for like 5 minutes using my senses and talking about the world around me or talking about a concept, something like that. And then I'll just read through the paragraph that I wrote, just completely free writing, letting myself, just write whatever comes out. And I highlight all the titles that jump out at me. So, but if you're a journaler in terms of like that journaling, or in terms of like at the end of your day, you're just writing about how your day went, whatever, you can find titles in there too.
I love that. I think the cool thing with the free writing or journaling is that that's an internal thing, whereas books, movies, TV shows, even just everyday conversations, those are all external things. But when you're actually free writing or journaling, getting your own thoughts and feelings down, those titles that jump out at you came from you. And I think that's really cool because that can bring up different angles and stories and concepts that are kind of in your subconscious that can creep out during those free writing and journaling experiences because you're not really thinking about it. It just kind of rises on its own.
Absolutely. And then because they already came from your subconscious, um, probably already a deeper meaning to those songs. Like if, something rose in you during that journaling and you found that title, okay, there's already an idea for you to take that song somewhere else. So I love finding titles from those internal sources, but sometimes you just can't get there. Sometimes it's too much work. So those external sources can be really great sparks of inspiration as well.
For sure, yeah, titles are everywhere. Like, and I think when you are open to being inspired and noticing titles at unexpected times, that definitely leads to incredible songs because it has for me and I know it has for you. So, now we are going to do a little fun thing. So, you guys listening are going to see this in action. So, Madison is going to read a poem and then we will see where this goes. So, go ahead, Madison.
Okay, so I'm going to be reading a poem called End of Summer by Stanley Kunitz, and it goes like this: An agitation of the air, a perturbation of the light, admonished me the unloved year would turn on its hinge that night. I stood in the disenchanted field, amid the stubble and the stones, amazed while a small worm lisped to me the song of my marrow bones. Blue poured into summer blue, a hawk broke from his cloudless tower, the roof of the silo blazed, and I knew that part of my life was over. Already the iron door of the north clangs open, birds, leaves, snows, order their populations forth, and a cruel wind blows.
Beautiful. So, let's go back and forth and list three titles that stood out to us. You go first. Which one?
I love the word silo. The silo blazed. But silo as a title would be really cool.
Oh, okay, love it. So I thought of Disenchanted.
Ooh. I love a cruel wind blows.
Oh, that's a good one too. So my next one I have is The Unloved Year.
Oh, that one's good. That was gonna be mine. Um, and then Summer Blue.
Yeah, that was my last one too. Awesome. So you had the summer blue and the unloved year jumped out at you too, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
so out of those two, since those ones both resonated with us, which one would you rather discuss?
I think Unloved Year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a really great one. So this can go in many different directions. I think looking at it literally, it's like the year you didn't love. Like, can be just a bad year. If you look at the other side of this, where you can kind of reframe the title and see each word individually, unloved can just mean a time where you didn't feel loved, or maybe it's after you fell out of love, and putting year to that, that can be the year that that happened.
Yeah, just to quickly say what Demi's doing here. She's just recoloring the title, which is where you take a title and you find the different meanings in that. And so maybe in one chorus, at the top of chorus is talking about how much you for unloved year you hated that year or whatever, and then the next chorus is like maybe the year itself was unloved by you or what, or or maybe like you it deserved to be loved but you didn't love it or whatever, so it's just flipping that meaning in each chorus so that way it doesn't mean the same thing each time.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic because I think the coolest thing when you have a title like this where it can be interpreted different ways is that you give the listener different pieces of the story and different verses. And that's something that I sometimes struggle to do when I'm writing about a story or a specific concept for my life because you can kind of get stuck in the same place. But when you're writing from a title, it's almost like that title or phrase provides all these different avenues you can go down. And the other thing, too, is like, you want everything in the song to go back to the hook and the chorus and the title. So when you're writing from that, you can kind of see those different angles. And when you naturally do that in the writing process, everything is going to go back to that title.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really cool when you have a title that has so many options to it. Because then maybe it sparks something in another writer, or maybe I think part of what makes songwriting so awesome is that people write about their very specific experiences, but then it's taken very universally. And it really once that song's out in the world to your listener, it really becomes their song and about their experiences. So having a title that can have different meanings or different interpretations can just really expand upon that. And then I think just connects you with your audience even more.
For sure, absolutely. So let's take this a step further. So, out of the different interpretations with the unloved year, what do you think we should do for our storyboard? Like, as if you and I were writing the song right now. What are your ideas for possibly a first verse?
Okay. Yeah, so that first verse, I think that we should take it literally, and that, like, you personally didn't love that year. It yeah, just take it in that value, and you talk about your verse not loving that year.
So then I think what we could do moving through the story is in that first verse, you're listing those things maybe that you didn't love about that year, maybe using some kind of language, like
Like
sensory
sensory
details.
imagery.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. To show the different ways that you don't love that year. Maybe like, I don't know, like a torn calendar, like crossed out dates,
Yeah,
and
like an empty New Year's party, like,
right.
standing alone at the end of the night,
Yeah.
uh, like, deleting the photos from your phone, whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, it's a good one too. And maybe just the feeling of like, if you don't love something, everything feels dull and like not good. So even the pretty moments of the year, like spring blooming and summer months, and even the beautiful moments of that year were colored darkly.
Oh, totally. Like, you notice the mud and not the flowers. You notice the
Right.
rain and not the sun. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think that'd be perfect for a first verse. Then moving on to the second verse, I think this is an interesting setup because you're painting this picture of this very dismal year. And then when you get to the chorus, that's where you're going to drop the title, The Unloved Year, which makes sense because of the way you painted the picture. And then the listeners are going to be asking, well, what about this year made it this way? And I think this is where we can kind of do the recolorization where we're showing that you felt unloved that year. Maybe you fell out of love, the relationship didn't go well, and then you're kind of making it more internal, stepping away from the sensory details and showing what happened to you personally that made you feel like that was an unloved year.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe yeah, you use that sensory detail and you show those moments of, sitting alone at the restaurant and blocking his number, or like showing up at his house and he's not there or whatever, or at their house. And maybe you even another option is taking those original moments of like the mud and the sun and the spring or whatever, and it's zooming out and showing, oh, it's because you're walking by yourself. Oh, it's because you were supposed to meet on a park bench and they never showed, like whatever. Um, yeah, I love that. I love flipping that title in that way.
I love how you keep bringing up the flowers because when you think about like love, like you think of red roses. So maybe you remember back to springtime when all the flowers were blooming, and instead of your loved one, instead of them giving you flowers, you're seeing them die. Something like that too could work.
Yeah. You and I know how to write some sad songs. So I love that instinct there.
So now the bridge. Oh man. What should we
Oh, it's
do
your
for the
favorite
bridge?
part. This is your like domain here. What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like the bridge can kind of say that that unloved year is over and behind you, and the seasons pass. That season of your life has passed. If you're talking with the years, you can bring in the seasons. And you can talk about how, like, you're hopeful to have a loved year. And then maybe the last chorus can be flipped with that instead of unloved year.
You could flip that last chorus after the verse, after the bridge, excuse me, to being something like, I'm not gonna have another unloved year, or something like that.
Yeah, and that's perfect too because another thing that we songwriters do, aside from just finding ways to recolor the titles in the verses and the bridge, is the lead ins to the choruses. So there's a way to kind of bridge the gap between the verse and the chorus or the bridge and the chorus in a way where the lead in words to that chorus are different each time. And so what I was kind of saying was actually saying loved instead of unloved, but what Madison's saying totally works too because you can set it up in a way where instead of saying maybe I had an unloved year, she was saying I'm not gonna have an unloved year. So the chorus itself stays the same, but the way it's led into is different.
Yeah, I love those lead-in phrases because just one phrase can completely reshape the meaning of that section of your song. That's definitely something I probably overuse in my writing, but, hey, it works.
No, it's so cool. Yeah, and that's a perfect thing. Like when you have a title where you can do that and you have all these different ways of approaching the chorus different, that just leads to a more rounded song that's not just the same thing being said over and over and over again. Sure, the lyrics and the chorus are the same, but because you're setting it up differently, it kind of has a different meaning. And I think that's incredible. I definitely think that's something that you can't overdo. Like, I don't understand how you can overdo that. Maybe you feel like you're doing it a bit much, but it's definitely a technique that works for sure. In the first verse, we are describing the year as being dismal and all these sensory details showing that it wasn't a great year. The chorus is specifically just saying the big message that it was an unloved year. The second verse is getting more personal and showing the listener what exactly in your life happened to you that made you feel unloved during that year. Chorus comes back again. Then the bridge is looking to the future and saying that you are not going to have an unloved year and having more hope for a better one to come. And then obviously the last chorus is framed differently. So there you go. That is how this could work. And Madison and I have definitely used this in our own writing. So, Madison, what is one song that you have written from a title for?
Yeah, I have this song called "Walking on the Ceiling," which actually, was a title inspired by Andrea Stolpe, who asked me to think about a position that I sat in when I was a kid, and, so something I would do, I would lay on the floor, and I'd pretend I was walking on the ceiling with my feet. So I did that, and I realized, "Oh, walking on the ceiling, that's kinda cool." So I took that title. And the song just from there really storyboarded into this into about just feeling disconnected, kind of about anxiety, and just never really feeling like you're on the same plane as everybody else. You're walking on the ceiling, that kind of thing.
I love it. No, just when you said "Walking on the Ceiling," I was like, "Never heard a song called that." That's the cool thing with the titles is they're so unexpected, like, and they're so unique too.
Yeah, what's one that you have to me?
So one of mine is "Rain on My Parade," and I'm so excited to record this. So basically, it's really fun because "Rain on My Parade" is a phrase that means like, don't spoil this for me, don't ruin it for me. And so this song was inspired after I received award nominations for the Jersey Music Awards. Some people weren't very nice to me. So I was like, yeah, you're not going to ruin this moment for me. And so I was like, yeah, you're not going to rain on my parade. And so that's where that came from. But the way I did it was I literally took rain and parade as two very different things. Like I stripped away the metaphorical language of rain on my parade and took it literally. But I still pulled in the concept of that song in the verses. So the first verse is through the lens of the rain. And so I'm saying things like, you know, you're not going to wash me out, stop stealing sunshine like your winter, things like that, and stop drizzling on my roses. So it's bringing in the weather imagery there. And then the second verse pulls on the parade. So I'm basically saying, like, I'm having the time of my life at this parade, higher than the floats, and I'm the one on the carpet and you're the clown in the circus, that kind of thing. So it's literally pulling literal language from those two into the concept of you're not going to rain on my parade. And so that was really fun. That was probably like the first song that I really did the recolorization for, and that was a really fun experience because after that, I definitely want to do that more.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't know that people weren't the nicest to you, so I'm sorry that
Oh, no, it's
happened.
fine.
But I'm at the very least, I'm glad a new song came out of it, and I can't wait to hear it because it sounds like it's gonna be well, actually, I have heard it, so I know it's already amazing. I was just trying to play it cool there for a second, like I didn't have a sneak preview.
No, it's a fun one, and I'm very excited. So, yeah, so this was a very fun episode. Very, like spontaneous. None of this could be planned in advance. So, this was really fun to do this episode and talk all about writing from a title. I love talking about songwriting tools and techniques. I think that's really important. And you and I have definitely written some kick ass songs, so we know what we're talking about here. Um, but thank you so much for joining me, Madison. Are there any final thoughts you would like to share about writing from a title?
Well, no, except for just to do it. I think it's just a super underutilized tool, and we've we've had or I've spoken to many pro songwriters, like Grammy nominated songwriters, stuff like that. And this is a tool that they use as well. When you go into a co-writing room, if you're a Nashville staff writer or not even a staff writer, but if you go into a co-writing room, often you only have like 2 or 3 hours to write a full song. So um, just go in and make it easy on yourself. Have a title to start with, or have something at the very least to start with. So that way you're not sitting there for 3 hours wondering, oh gosh, where am I going to go? Um, yeah, I just think sometimes we make, and I'm a hypocrite because I'm saying this and I do this myself, but I think we make things way too hard on ourselves and just start nowhere, and we're like, oh gosh, we have to figure it out. And no, don't make things too hard on yourself. Let's start with a title. Try it.
For sure, yeah. And I think what you brought up there about doing this in a co-write is a great point to end on because clearly these titles have different interpretations. Something that jumps out at you might be very clear to you, but another writer might see that from a different perspective. And that just brings in the whole, recolorization thing. So when you're writing those different sections of the song, you're not banging your heads off the wall like, oh God, where are we taking this now? You have different people with different perspectives bringing different layers of that title and the story to the table. And so you guys all contribute to the song, and I think it can flow much more naturally.
Didn't our song Houdini start with the title?
Yeah, I was actually
Yeah.
thinking of that song, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, for that, like, we took it in not a lot of different places, but there was a lot of ideas that stemmed from it, but then we had, like, okay, like, we have a roadmap, we have a semblance of what this song should be, and, I had such a fun time writing that song with you. Maybe one of these days we'll get it recorded and out, but, at the moment, it's just our little secret.
Well, Madison, it was lovely having you again for a great episode. Can you share with everyone where they can connect with you online?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast being here. And I just love talking about songwriting tools. So I really appreciate it. You can find me on Spotify or any of your streaming services at Madison Young. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's madison.rayanne. So Madison dot Raeanne. And that's actually the best social media place to find me. So hit me up there.
The way you spelled your name was very like, okay, Madi.
You know why? Because every time I spell my name, people are like, "Wait, what was that? Was there an E? Was there an extra A?" No, it's Ray Ann.
Funny story about this, real quick. So, when I released LA Will Wait for Me, CD Baby gave me such a headache because I entered your name in the co writer spot, and they have this very annoying capitalization like thing. So there were certain songs of mine where the titles, like words, were getting lowercase that shouldn't have been. Perfect example for your name because it's like Ray Ann and the Ann is capitalized. It wasn't capitalizing the A. And I was like on the phone with these people like for weeks. I was like, y'all gotta capitalize her name. Like her name, that's her legal name. You have to capitalize the A. And they're like, but we can't. I'm like, you guys, that is literally her name. Like, capitalize the A already. Oh my gosh.
You know what though? That's insane to me because like Anne Marie, like that huge artist songwriter has capital A and capital M, and I think it's one word or at least it's hyphenated. So it's like, come on, guys, figure this one out.
It's because it's CD Baby. This is
Oh.
not a pro CD Baby podcast, but I still use them as my distributor. Shh. And on that note,
Getting all the facts and insider information here on this podcast.
this podcast is not sponsored or anything by CD Baby at all. So don't worry. All right. Well, Madison, it was lovely having you on. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this very fun episode again with Madison Young. And of course, until next time,
Stay right on track.
track.